Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mist Podcast. I'm your host, Aeromist. It has been quite a while since I've done an episode. I guess a little update. I definitely don't look the same as I did last time. I've lost total almost about 200 pounds now. So, physically, mentally, emotionally, we're doing pretty well around here now. So, I also really wanted to be able to recollect on getting enough gatherable amount of ideas to come in here and talk about, because I really want to be able to dive into specific information that I think is productive, presentful, and important for people to take in. The background music, in case you're wondering, is a lo-fi album that I made myself. You can find that pretty much everywhere, from the instrumental to the actual album I made with it. Anyway, let's dive right in. My main topic for today, I say the first. See, I almost like I have to get reacquainted with talking like I usually do. The first topic, the topic of the day, is going to be about free will. And I think a lot of people have watched videos about free will, and people have their perspectives. But I have a really specific aspect on how I'm viewing free, right, quote unquote free will. Because it's basically a conversation of predestined fate or controlled destiny. And human conceptualization is what takes us away consistently from being able to find the understanding or grasp the understanding of what we're looking at or what we're trying to get, what we need to understand. Because the lens that we have sometimes can really, really take us away from just from knowing what we're trying to know. Because we box a lot of concepts around a bigger idea into their own placements, and that's what makes the bigger idea only attainable from a specific amount of lenses posed on that to reflect on light. It was a little bit too metaphorical, but anyway, because destiny and fate are almost completely and preconditionally intertwined, but there's definitely a distinctive break on how we're evaluating what actually is fate and completely out of your control, quote unquote, and what is now somewhat deterministically in your control, as you could say, right? So the way I look at this is that predeterministic fate is bound by an energetic representation in the universe, meaning that there's always something going on. There's always something happening. There's always going to be something to make something happen because of this, and this, or whatever the fuck, whether it's 10 things or 1,000 things that are going to accumulatively make up whatever is going to happen. So, fate in itself is ingrained into our biology. That is ingrained into our presence and in our existence, into our energy. That is ingrained into the energy itself, is that there will always be some set of predeterministic things. But when we understand that the universe is a multidimensional place, and we are only perceiving the perception of these two concepts down more at a third dimensional level, then when we take this higher is when we can actually start getting a more graspful understanding on exactly what's here, what's going on, and why it is what it is. Because it's just like if you stopped trying to talk back into your own head, if you just let it happen, you just sat there, you're going to think, you're going to have to do things, there's still going to be energy flowing in your body. So either way, the clockwork is going to happen. Nature's clockwork is still going to happen. The chaoticism and the balance within the universe and everything in between, whatever spectrum that might ever be, still is going to happen. But one of the prepositional things of consciousness and its ability to progress itself over perception and perception alone is that it now can take this wheel and it can change which lane the wheel is rolling down. It can change the mountain. It can change the shift on which way it's going down the mountain. And because of that happening, now, because when we understand, obviously, the fourth dimension, the realm of possibilities, is going to intersect all of the lanes of these, then now you are sitting at an entirely different realm of understanding what it is that is free to you, what actually is in your control. And this actually even almost comes down to a mindful sense of, we talk about balance, and understanding the presence of that balance is the mindfulness of control and balancing what you have in front of you. Why is this? It's because if you focused way too much on the outside instead of what you should be focusing on directly, then you'll get lost in the sauce instead of getting yourself where you need to go. You do this all the time. Everybody already does this all the time. Meaning, you'll think around an idea all day. You'll go around all these little trails. But out of the whole sequence, there's still a part of it that you have to focus on, that you will end up focusing on, right? You could say this as, we could take this at a vibrational point anyway, which is what you're attaching yourself to pertains now to what your vibration is attaching yourself to. And that will now shift the predeterminism of your fate, because your destiny, right, your controlled destiny, your enactment upon the wheel has now shifted into an entirely different, staggering realm. And this is just one of the gifts that we all inertly have, having sentience and having the cognitive progression of our own sentience, and being able to think, being able to progress, being able to evaluate, to have logistics, to be able to do whatever it is that we're doing that is not relative to biological premonitions and nothing to do with our biology, let alone. Meaning, not just evaluating the realm of thought being what it is, right? Because we could sit here, and that's why most people get stuck in the realm of mental illness. Is like, okay, if I'm thinking a specific way because of the subconscious thoughts that have been constantly prerogatively going inside of my head, and that's all that I'm giving into and listening to, then I'm not enacting any change. I'm living in a world that has been made, you could say, for me, predeterministically by fate. But now sentience provides me the opportunity for me to do whatever the hell I am going to do with what's in front of me, with what information I have. Because you can understand the whole roundabout, but what you focus on to do with what's in front of you, like what information you have, that completely determines exactly what is going to come out of that. We're just, because of inertly being higher dimensional beings, the experience of our prevalence from the physical to the metaphysical and everything above that, as you could say from a dimensional point, is just completely ingrained with our involvement in things that are not even relative to this. And so, well, it's like, all right, but we say this, how is it true, quote unquote, or how is it relative that me wanting to now create said change or enact said shift of the trail that I'm now going to be rolling the ball on, not predetermined by the fate that my consciousness was going to convolutively come to this conclusive point, regardless of what was going to happen, because of my biology and my process of thinking and the information that I ended up getting in front of me that might have changed what is now clicking in my subconscious and has completely shifted my vibrational stature to a new place. Well, to be fair, that in itself also becomes a part of the box that we can create, right? Because we know that there's still a playing field of where you can say, you can do, you can enact. But if a cat is never aware, then it's going to live in the same realms of its own boundaries. There's never something that's going to change what's going on with that cat, unless something of sentience changes its conditions. Or you could say sentience, right? This is where the line really gets blurred, though, because if before humanistic sentience was a thing, right? Because what would then at that point be changing what's going on to the cat? What is the inertia? Well, the inertia would obviously be the universal premise of still the predeterministic circumstances of what's happening to said energetic presence. And that's where, I mean, this once again, this gets deeper into like consciousness and just understanding consciousness, but which obviously, I think everyone's depiction of consciousness, even with the scientific premises that we have, it's the spiritual premise that really dilutes down how we are all in our own lens describing this specific thing. Because obviously we could sit and talk science about said thing, but that doesn't fully help the conceptualization of tackling the idea at hand. So, if that's the case, how are we determining to say that the consciousness of the universe isn't just as relative to our centerpiece consciousness that we are using, right, the sentient part of ourselves to change the wheel, to have destiny? Because fate will always be there, but how does destiny come remotely into play into this, and how does that even, how are we saying that as a concept is something that's applicable, right? And it is only because if you weren't a higher dimensional being, right, if you were just the cat, you would only be going off of fate. That's all you're bound in, right? But because you are a predominant higher dimensional being that exists in these higher dimensions, and it's not to say obviously a cat couldn't whatever, but the third dimension and understanding physics, every level of dimensions has a different grounds for which the physics itself is now interacting with whatever's in that playing field. So the third dimension has different physics than the sixth, than the eighth, than the 1 millionth, whatever fucking dimension it is. Each place has an entirely different realm of structure that it's working off of. So if we understand that, then what pros is that a cat also isn't a higher dimensional being and acting upon that? Because it is only bound within its own biological structure to enact upon what it is doing, living out, and awareness is one of the biggest predicators to sentience. But animals, I say animals, there are some that are sentient, you could say aware, but how aware are we determining that that is predeterministic upon enacting within destiny and the influence of energy? Because that line can get really thin, like really, 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 really thin sometimes. But here nor there, to really come back to the point, which is to say, they are not creating an awareness point of thought that can be relative to us, which is why their destiny, their predeterministic circumstances may actually just be different from ours if they are there. But we know that everything that is an animal, and we're animals, we have animalistic instincts, etc., still has its clock, its predeterministic points. Its fate is always there. But the realm of destiny and sentience's involvement can be so broadened. This is why we can't put the relativity to the cat or the other places. The only thing we can use it as is a relevancy of understanding what is there, but not how relatable it all is across the whole board, right? Meaning, obviously there is a point of our sentience that is different than what we can presume the experience is of these other creatures. And that is only because of evolution and understanding what we have been able to enact within the change of our environment and our survival tactics. Because obviously without sentience, we're not progressing the realm of our survival. We are sheep, we are cats, we are whatever that is still outside of the... There's more fate enacted onto you than there is sentient destiny. I guess that's a good way to measure it, is that what balance do you have of the two? Is there more destiny in the hands upon the fate or not? I would say humanistic sentience takes that more into our hands of destiny and balances it more to fate than the opposite, right? Because animals are living off of their own balance of sentience that is obviously not necessarily relative to ours, but it is what it is. I won't say that they're not sentient to some degree, but with that being said, obviously their balance is different because they live a different lifespan. They live a different third dimensional experience than us. Why am I going in this deep to really like put that point into play? It's because we really have to solidify the idea of knowing where some of this comes from and how relative it is now to us. So understanding that this is kind of a half and half. Why is it a half and half? You could say why is that more balanceful for us? And that's because we have the higher dimensional capability of being more cognitive in those higher places. Thus our enactment into the lower dimensional phasements are now more in the realm of your destiny, of you being able to shift its prerogative around, instead of consistently having a basis in everything just always is going to happen for reasons, because it does. Everything happens for a reason, but you can test your own powers. See, I could say this to you, but test what your own realm of destiny actually is. And what I mean by that is, everybody has had a time, not aside from social media or anything that is picking up your information to feed information back to you. In your own world, because this is different for everybody. I could explain my own experiences, but everyone's premise of their spirit, and your spirit does play a part within your consciousness, and this is a really interesting aspect, which is, sorry, I almost lost my train of thought. The spirit is playing a role of also abiding to help the consciousness, because a part of your brain is the animalistic part, right? There's 3 compartments of the brain, and the parts of your brain that are interacting with your spirit are also of prevalent sentience, because they are also becoming a guiding force. So in your own realm, test it. You've probably seen it before, where you talked about something, you and a couple people talked about something, whatever, and it showed up in front of you in physical reality. It was there in front of you. It showed up some way, somehow. You talked about it, it happened. And you can say all day that this is coincidence. You can live in your own reality, but there's always information in front of you. Always. Energy always has information. There is so much information going through your body constantly right now with your DNA, your RNA, your genetic code, your mind. Use 130 million neurons just to collect a memory. So there's always something there. And understanding the scope lens of you being a human, the enactment of your light predicated onto something is going to shift and change its position. Because we already understand this at a quantum level, that the observation of particles changes upon the perceiver. Now, we obviously know that physics work differently at each level, but maybe the conceptualization of that is remotely the same, but different in its play-out premise down at the 3rd dimension, and this is what you're testing, right? And you should test yourself. You should test your manifestation. You should test all these things. But testing them also means that if you are 1000% skeptical of yourself and you become unopen to what it is that can be there, then you're obviously already predetermining that it's not going to be there, because you focused on the latter instead of the front end. And that's kind of the whole point of, like, as I was saying earlier, something will happen. There will always be something there. But what you end up predominantly focusing on becomes the play out of your reality. And that also becomes the play out of what your destiny transfers into your predetermined fate. Because the fate will happen, you will live, you will do all these things, many things, whatever those things are, and then you may, quote unquote, as you would say, die in a 3rd dimension. I don't believe in the idea of death. That's a whole topic for another video, for an entirely, that's a whole different deep dive. Because once again, human conceptualization completely destroys and takes us away from really understanding exactly what it is. Meaning, and when I say that too, it's more that, like, we don't challenge our own ideas enough and challenge ourselves and be able to contemplate the presence that everything we know can shatter in a second, to be able to establish more things. And because of that, when we create the box and we do not let ourselves continue to be open, then we are also not giving ourselves the opportunity to see what could possibly actually be there. And I think a lot of people have had this experience with a realm of euphoria when you are thinking of something, or not even necessarily just thinking of anything, but whenever you're experiencing and you're just kind of going through it. Oh, fuck, I lost my train of thought there. Fuck. I hate when that happens to me and I'll be like, oh, I lost my train of thought. Hold on, I'm trying to get it back. We live, baby. There ain't no cutting this shit. You just gonna have to deal with it. I lost it. You can ask in the comments if you want me to reiterate if it was important to you, and I will tackle this again in another video later. I don't mind. I don't mind talking about more shit at any point. But all right, back on topic. Actually, overall, is to say you can change the way the wheel of fate turns, and your higher dimensional self, the higher version of yourself, the self of you that exists outside of the third dimension, that is still a part of you, because we know your energy, we know you're nothing but fucking energy at the end of the day. When you close your eyes, you're going somewhere else that is not relative to the third dimension, whatever. Okay, so with this is to say, what you focus on in the realm of the fourth dimensional possibilities is what is going to play out, because what you're thinking about is what you attach yourself to, and the attachment of putting yourself to that is now going to play out within your physical, because you are just like gravity. You have an electromagnetic field, you encompass that, that's how it is. So with that, how do I make sure I shift my destiny to be the fate that I want it to be? As I said, test yourself, so you know, so you understand, so you can grasp this in your own realm. Shift your focus. Because the higher dimensional realm of the fourth dimension, right, we talked about the third dimension plays out to show you how the fateful clock is going to happen no matter what, and everything within the third dimension is bound by those means. But the shift within sentience becomes the awareness prerogative of our focus to be able to change that wheel's direction. If we sit here and think too much on like, if that is or isn't what it is, then you're going to still continue to take yourself away just from being able to beg the idea effectively to see if it's there or not. Live your truest truth. Make it make sense to you. I'm here only trying to provide, hopefully, information that can be evaluative, progressive, important, and you guys are always welcome to hit me up on social media. You're always welcome to hit me up on anything really and have a conversation. If somebody wants to give suggestions, if you want to have me challenge an idea with you, right? Because like you have questions or you want to get through, I guess you could say therapy, but like, you know, there's things. I would love to have a discussion about anything, so by all means feel free to reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. It can be on here or it can be off here. To finish and close this out is you do have control, but how much discipline do you have to your biology? And that will tell you and show you what your fate is. That will show you what your destiny is already predetermined. And then your higher dimensional self with the awareness can shift, because you can recollect your information and you can do whatever you want over the prerequisite of what you have gathered through your experiences and whatever else. But it's now up to what you do with that information. I could say, I could sit here and oppose, or I could live with the idea that somebody's given me before, right? Like as a kid. But it's up to me to either continuously value my self-worth by what somebody told me, or to tackle that finally and be valued by what I want to be valued by. Just as an example, meaning you have the capability with the information. Your awareness is your sentience. Your awareness is your key. I wish you good luck in your journey. Focus on what is important. The more you distract yourself, the more you will take yourself away from getting, being, living, and doing what it is that maybe your soul is calling you to do. There's a fulfillment to the soul that maybe your self in general, your higher self, is calling you to. But the distractions of the lower dimensions we live in, AI, the predication of our systematic world, has diluted you down. Be aware of yourself and be honest. You can do this. You are powerful, and you can do anything in this world, in this planet, that you choose to do, given that you understand yourself. And with that, thank you for listening. I hope to see you again very, very soon. You are powerful.